And then threw them in a big pile. No, I kind of left them.
I could see how I.
Yeah.
What's going up, there's people going up the hill.
Oh,
This is big.
Hey, Mitch.
Hey, Joe.
How's it going? Good to meet you guys.
Yes, funny.
Are you excited to be handing him off to Kyle?
Yes, we're so
He's
excited.
nervous.
We're so excited. He's in good hands.
I know. Absolutely.
I know you will. You would talk about
Yeah.
No, I left your house and I was at, I did an official minute paper from a tree. And on Friday, so I'm talking about today, on Friday, I did I was in Bridgeland for quite a while. Friday, and everybody had his chance to do it. Just to let you know, everybody I ran into.
good. How do you live?
Yeah, no signing, sorry.
Take your seat.
Oh, I'm sorry. He went out to get his mask.
Well, I saw him on my, I didn't realize I was supposed to be able to see. Sorry about that.
We won't be long.
Get numbers will never do.
So,
I mean,
We're not on the agenda. There's time.
That's what it was.
Hey, we'll talk.
Lucas Sanders. Hey, Lucas.
Lucas.
hi, Lucas.
How you doing?
Nice to
Are we
see
on-
you. It's Mike.
Yeah, we're gonna just do you in closing comments.
Oh, okay.
Some kind of setup. Yeah,
Citizen comment. Okay. Well, no, that's
it's
what
it's in the packet, I gave that, so. Yep.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
Sister,
Yeah, CC?
would you remind people that are calling in? Whether you're not talking?
Yes, maybe, yeah. Thanks, CC.
It's an addition.
Yeah, right, yeah.
No,
You go the other way. Wow.
walking at Grondin's. No, there was, yeah, so that way in case there's another shutdown, doesn't grow.
What says unkept as always.
What did Patty say? I looked like Don King like a week ago. She's like, you look like Don. It was like everywhere. I was like,
If you need to borrow our washing machine, you can. Everybody else does.
Patty Laveron.
And flat tire. And change.
Victor?
Yes,
It
Cece.
seems as though I'm not hearing anything.
Nobody's talking, Cece.
Oh, that's it, okay.
It's unusual.
We're getting close though.
That would explain it.
It's there. We're at 7 o'clock. Let's call this meeting to order. If we could all rise for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call.
John Leo.
Here.
Matt Bagheera.
Here?
John Cups.
Here.
Mike Turkis.
Here.
CC Johnston.
I'm here.
We do have a quorum.
Very good. Minutes from the June 1st regular meeting.
I didn't see any problem with
I read through them and didn't see any problems, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. All in favor? Oh, no, we got a roll call.
Yeah.
Aye.
No, roll call.
CC Johnston.
Yes,
John Cups.
Yep.
Mike Turkis.
Yes.
Matt Bagheera.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Good. And the minutes from the closed session of June 1st.
they looked accurate to me.
Same with me, so again, I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
John Leo.
Yes.
John Cups. CC Johnston.
Yes,
Matt Bagheera.
Yes.
And Mike Turkis.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Good. Bill committee?
My bills are good.
Good.
We found one discrepancy with my bills, which we reconciled. So understanding that, I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
Two stewards.
Matt Bagheera.
Yes.
CC Johnston.
Yes,
John Cups.
Yes.
Mike Turkis.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Excellent. And it's time for citizens' comment.
Just make a note for those that are participating by telephone and those that are watching on YouTube. We will go to the people that are present physically first, and then go to those on the phone, and then to those on YouTube. If you are at any point not talking, you should mute your phones if you're on the telephone. That way we don't get any interference. That'd be much appreciated. Thanks. So I have a public comment. The Salvation Army, they would like to ring bells in front of the IGA grocery store. I decided not to put this as a regular agenda item. It can be done pretty quickly. So I know we have a couple representatives here, so yeah.
We're just asking for consideration, as we have in the last couple of years, to ring bells for our Christmas in July for one day from 10 to 6. We have talked to Beth, the manager at the IGA, and Suzanne Hugg, who said that there are no conflicts with any other group and that we would be most welcome to do that. So that's what we're asking consideration for.
That's a great idea. Any public comment? No?
I like it.
All right.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jill Whalen. I live at 5244 4th Street. And on Friday, my 9-year-old cat was killed by somebody coming down Bull Moose Hill. They were probably going the speed limit, which is 25, even if they were going 30. It's pretty fast to be going down there. His brother was killed about 4 years ago, pretty much in the same spot. And I would just like the city council to possibly take under consideration the fact that, you know, it could be a little kid, it could be something other than somebody's pet. And it seems like 25 miles an hour is pretty fast because people get speeding down the hill and then they don't think about stopping as they get closer to houses. And also I would like to, city council to request putting a stop sign and at Washington Street, or maybe a speed bump, or maybe both, because people go down there really, really fast. And normally all you can do is yell at them, but, it could be a more serious thing than a cat, even though the cat was very serious to me. So, thank you.
Mayor, if I just suggest we do the Salvation Army, finish the Salvation Army, and then answer that.
Public comment on the subject.
Yeah.
I'll motion to approve it.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's
Yeah.
good. They have the AG's approval. so.
Yeah.
Consensus is, this doesn't need a roll call.
All right, we'll approve your bell ringing on the floor.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.
Regarding Ms. Whelan's comment, Chief, I know I sent your concerns to Chief Knight, and I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, we've moved our speed monitoring sign down there. That's been done, and also I've sent an email out to the guys, basically asking for extra patrol. I sat down there Friday night myself for almost 45 minutes. We sit down both ends of it. We will continue to monitor it as far as the 25 zone, reference to raise or lowering it. That would be, we could possibly do a speed study. I'll pull up the crash data on that road as well. But just to let you know, Miss, that we will be down there as much as possible, trying to slow people down on Marion, and that's for the speed limit sign to be down there. They'll be down there periodically throughout the summer. We were just waiting a little bit too. Once the golf course opened, it seems to be a straight shot up to the golf course from the point, so that's why I waited a little bit to put it down there once the golf course got open. But we will monitor it a lot. Yes.
Is your speed sign just going for people going up the hill? or-
We'll do it. We'll flip it. We'll flip it. Actually, I'm trying to apply for a grant to get an additional one. We have 3 currently, and I'm trying to raise that up to 5. I'm waiting to hear from the grant to see if I can get another one. So we rotate them throughout the city, and so in a week or 2, I'll flip it and get the opposite direction traffic.
Thank you very much.
So I will monitor as we all will.
Chief, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
If you could place it between Harrison and Washington, that's where the speeding takes place. The 25-mile-an-hour sign is actually to the east of Traverse Street, so people who get on Traverse don't see it.
Okay.
And then there's no other signpost or anything put it on, so if you move that further to the west,
Okay.
you'd be in a position to slow people down. Once they hit Bowles Hill or hit the swamp, we don't care. Well, we're here, I know, but.
I do as well because there's a lot of deer in there.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody swerving to miss a deer and going in the.
I'm more concerned about kids, dogs, and,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, no, we'll get it down there. I'll have to add another stake if the DPW put another stake in. So, okay, I'll get it moved.
Yeah,
Between
that'd be,
Harrison and Washington then.
do more good, thank you.
Okay.
Any other public comment in the crowd?
I'm George
Are
B.
we still talking
I live
about the cat issue or are we tree issuing?
We're still doing public comment. We're moving
Okay.
past the cat.
I'm neighbors with Jill, and I just kind of wanted to second what she and Wayne both said, and appreciate you guys kind of stepping up the effort. The digital sign does seem to have helped a little bit. I mean, I noticed people they hit their brakes right when they see it kind of in front of my house a little bit more, so.
I've asked in the past as a joke, as to who's at my driveway.
So we'll be down there. You'll see us, our cars down there. You might not see us because we'll be way on the end, but our radars pick all the way up this way.
Got it.
As an aside, it does cause certain people to speed up. The bicyclists,
Really?
the guys on the bicycles.
And actually, what.
You wanna see how fast? Yeah, I wanna see how fast I can go.
And what we can do with that sign as well is we can do a study with that sign. We'll report back the facts of what the vehicle reflects.
Does that sign have a data recording?
Correct, yeah.
Nice.
All right, moving on. Any other public comment?
If everybody's done, I just have a few things to touch on. Is that right? First of all, is the signs up at the park for the playgrounds are not sanitized signs. I would like to remove them. They're sitting in the middle, like either the DPW guys, and I haven't talked to Lucas about it, either the DPW guys have to mow around them or move them every time. And right now they're sitting in the middle of the bike path. And to me, they're almost a liability sitting in the bike path. I think at this point, most people realize that they're not sanitized. So I would like to keep whatever we have down at the beach, keep that there, the fencing. But as far as Kiwanis and as far as up here, I would like to remove the signs with your permission.
I don't have a problem. That's fine at this point, people are.
So now, right now, they're more of an eyesore and a hazard than they are actually helping. So, and then recently, is that okay? All right. Recently, there's been a lot of talk of use of force, and I just wanted, I know the sheriff that came out and made a statement. I just want to let you guys know that we take it serious here. We have a policy on use of force, and we have a policy on bias-based policing. And we review those policies, the use of force one we review annually, and we're on top of it. In connection with that, Victor and John sat in on our review of our the June 1st meeting. I talked about when we were in the middle of our assessment, and Victor and John sat in on the review of our assessment, and the assessor, I feel, gave us praise for how we engage with our community and how we've had one use of force in the last 3 years. And that was basically us grabbing a female that was intoxicated, putting her hands behind her back. That was our use of force in 3 years. So I'm proud of the guys taking it serious. I just want to let you know that I take it serious, and our department does, as well as bias-based policing. So just to address any issues on that, I feel like the guys do a really good job of de-escalating the situations. And a lot of that's because we know who we're dealing with day in and day out. We're engaged in the community. We know who we're arresting. We had a felonious assault uptown not too long ago, and the guy pulled a knife on his mother, and we walked into the car unhandcuffed. And this could have been, but it was our relationship that actually Mitchell was there. And so I'm proud of that. And then last of all, I would like to introduce Mitchell McPherson, his mother Michelle, and his father David. I came to you guys about the part-time employment, and on March 25th, Mitchell and I did a conditional offer of employment where he had to do 5 things. He had to successfully complete the police academy at Northwestern Michigan College. He had to successfully complete his physical fitness through MCOLS. He had to successfully complete the MCOLS license exam. He had to do a psychological, which was last Friday, and he had to complete my background investigation. And the psychological, I think, is probably the hardest. And last Friday, he spent almost 6 hours in Traverse City with our psychologist, and he passed that. He passed his license exam. So back on March 25th, all these 5 bullet points, he passed them all, which at that point to me was like a big account, or it was going to be a big task for him. And now we're to the day where he's going to get sworn in. Last Friday, while he was doing his psychological, I spent a good hour down in Kingsley, where Mitchell's from, and talked to several people in Kingsley about Mitchell McPherson, his dad and his mom, and they all had great things to say about the family. That's all I heard. Everybody I talked to, post office, gas station, convenience store, you name it. I went into a lot of them, and all I heard was great things. Oh, the McPhersons, they're a great family. That was a recorded message, and so they either paid them really well, or I actually think they're a great family. I went down to their house and met with them probably this March 25th or in that ballpark, and I was very pleased walking away from there. So I feel that Mitchell's going to be a great addition to our police department. I was going to announce him as like our 6'5" freshman center, you know. But no, he's a great young man with a great set of parents and brothers and sisters, and so Nick's going to swear him in, and this is his very first day. So you can go on over there.
All right.
Thank you.
Mitchell, congratulations.
Thank you. Am I party or am I?
Right there.
Okay.
If you just repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and Constitution of this state,
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police officer,
And I will faithfully discharge
duties
the duties of a police officer
of the city of Harbor Springs, state of Michigan,
of the city of Harbor Springs of the state of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
You are sworn in. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to have him on our force. I think we interviewed several people. Mitchell had that personality, I think it's a Harbor Spring personality. And
Congrats.
Probably not, but and I was like I would, but yeah.
We'll be seeing each other more frequently.
Yeah, we for sure will. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, I'll see you.
yeah, you heard me say when I started, the average age was 56, and we're decreasing that, and it's a good thing. Not saying us old people, but as Mitchell brings some life and some new energy and some new ideas, so hopefully he'll be here for a long, long time. So
We hope so, Jess.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I'll be right back. thank you guys for allowing me to continue to hire, so I'll be right back.
Okay. Any other public comment in the room?
Not related to anything on the agenda.
Not related to anything. No, good. Do we have any public comment on the phone that's not related to what's on the agenda? All right, check the interweb.
I don't see. We have 23 participants, but no public comment.
Thanks.
So we can move to the city manager section.
City manager section.
I just want to make one small change, and that's item F you see up there. That would be a closed session, and it won't be an open session.
Good.
Okay, so item A. Item A is a mid-year budget update. As we've been going through the charter, we've noticed, with the Charter Review Committee, we've noticed that the charter calls for quarterly budget updates to council. It's something that I don't think the city has been doing for a while, but so now Clerk Whitaker has prepared a brief presentation about where we stand in the budget so far, almost halfway through the year. I also did put in a list here of capital improvement projects or capital improvement plan projects and purchases that we had scheduled for this year that we may not be doing this year, or that they came back at a different cost than we anticipated. And many of them will be pushing off to next year. We're not eliminating any of these, but they may be pushed off to next year. So I'll pass off the bulk of the presentation to Nick, but you've guys probably seen the 50 or 70 pages in here of our different funds. So Nick.
Okay, well, as Victor said, this is not something that's been asked for by council for as long as I've been in here, and it's not been something that has been done for a long time. That being said, we do the budget process in December. This is just a snapshot of kind of where we're at as of the end of May. Now, keep in mind that city operations, for instance, you look in the general fund, as of right now, we've collected no money because property taxes don't start coming in until, July. So the actual go through each line by line item with this would take us hours and hours. But what I can tell you as of right now, with the data that we have, with the activity that's happened so far this year, we are on track to be on budget, or if not under budget, based on some of those items that we've chosen to put off that were in the capital improvements plan. There's nothing here that I've seen that is, an indicator that we're going way over budget in any one particular area. I assume you have had a chance to look through all of these, so I guess I will leave it to you with questions and just let you know that I'm working on reports that summarize this data. So it's more of a snapshot, one-page type item that we can look and say, all right, instead of scouring through literally 50 to 60 pages of data. But any questions that you may have, I can certainly answer. And again, any time, this is at my fingertips at any time during the work week, you can always call with questions or stop by or.
John, you have anything?
No, I slogged through the totals, and Nick and I talked about the need for a one-page, executive summary. So you can look at it and then use all this data to drill down if there's a question.
Right.
It seems we're on track, and I'm glad we started the process.
I agree.
With the practice of doing this. The summary will be helpful, and of course, you bringing to council's attention anything you feel needs to be highlighted. It's key.
Yeah, and if you remember, when we set the budget last December, we were budgeting some deficits in a few of the funds. This is more of an operational budget, the day-to-day stuff, and then our capital improvement plan ties into this. But as Victor had stated, some of these things for various reasons are not going to happen or might be put off until next year. So that will come to play when we go to the end of the year and amend this budget to closer reflect true activity. Then if those things get pushed on to next year, we'll budget for them again next year.
And to piggyback off that, I just want to explain the capital improvement plan items. So I know Chief Knight stepped out, but the police body cameras, he's not going to purchase this year. He's going to look into better deals and hopefully get them for next year. He's found some potentially, maybe he could get them for $70,000 instead of $100,000. So that's one thing. Essentially, Bay Water, the water improvements on Bay Street and West 3rd Street were switched. So West 3rd Street, we had moved to 2021. We moved it back to 2020. The Bay Water and Sewer, we moved to 2021 because of the high water. The North FEMA project, we wanted to do this, but both the school district and Irish Boat Shop said this was not the year for them to do this, so this is pushed in the future. Tree bases may or may not happen this year, depending on what we talk about later at this meeting. Agenda item D, I believe. Pickleball court improvements, we formed a committee, fundraising committee for that, or at least some people have created a fundraising committee. So potentially move to 2021, maybe later, all depends. Ford Park renovations, we did do some renovations there, new sidewalk. There's some renovations that were done there that the Ferry Foundation paid for, as well as the dock and dredge. We have the new barge there. So we potentially still have some more changes that could happen there, but those won't happen probably till the future. Deed digitization, and that's not going to happen. It's not that urgent. Other things are taking a priority. The post-FEMA project landscaping, we are in talks with Beckett and Rader using their in-kind services to do the design work on that right now. So we may get to that landscaping this fall. We may not. It all depends on the public process for that. And then geese control, we had $20,000. We cut that in about half to about $10,000. So those were just some notes that I had on where we stand in the capital improvements plan, projects and purchases.
What does that score column denote?
So this score column is, we had staff and members of boards and commissions rank the importance of each project.
Okay, and what would be the most important score?
The higher the score is.
But is it out of like 30 or 100?
It's at this point, I mean, I'd have to look back exactly how I phrased it at the capital improvements plan.
Just curious.
Yep.
And it was ranked by priority, cost.
There's a bunch of different factors, yeah.
8 or 10 different categories, and they had 6 or 8 people look at each project. And we approved it as a council last fall.
Late November, early December.
So there seems to be a good working policy for us. Comments on the budget there? It's on the tax bills, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's just the nature of the beast.
All right.
Public comments?
Any public comment? Public comment on the phone? Public comment on the internet?
No public comment on YouTube. So. I also just like to remind the public when they comment to please state their name before they speak so we can have it in for the record. All right. Move on to item 3B, the Methodist Church parking lot lease. So the background's there that you've read already, but we've entered into a lease for the parking lot at the Methodist Church back in 1994. It was between the DDA and the city on one side and the church on the other side. And the idea was that we did lease that parking lot for 20 years, and the city got to use that parking every summer. So there are certain conditions and obligations that the city had to meet. What we did was we turned it from a dirt parking lot into a paved parking lot. We paid for that, and then we got to use it for the summers. That lease technically expired in 2014, and we've been using it every summer as a public parking lot. The church last year, Pastor Susan Hitz and some board members had a conversation with me about seeing if we would like to fix the parking lot. There's some problems with it's not even. There's a lot of pooling of water. There were some drainage issues. The approach to it was causing a lot of bumpers and to break and damage to cars. So there was just agreement. So we were talking back and forth for several months, and then the COVID happened, the stay home order, so we kind of got sidetracked. But then last month we got back into it and we formulated an agreement, and that agreement is attached here. Some of the major highlights, as I mentioned, the old one was between the DDA and the church, with the city co-signing. But obviously this one is just going to be between the city and the church due to funding reasons. The old agreement allowed, well, it says here, that was a mistake. Allowed summer parking only. This agreement will allow year-round parking. The agreement will last 20 years. There will be an amortization schedule. That's in the likely case that the church decides to cancel the agreement, they will have to pay the city for any improvements made based on the amortization schedule. And the fifth major point is the city would be responsible for about $15,000 improvements, while the church will be responsible for about $2,000. The city has until July of 2021 to make the improvements. So that gives us flexibility for budget-wise if we want to do it this fall or wait until the spring to do it.
Can I ask a question?
Mary Ellen, can I wait till?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. The council, I would recommend the council approve this as written. It's aligned with the goals of our master plan, which says that we should seek these kind of agreements with churches. That's section F under goal 12C under section F. And then we have a final completion date of July 2021 as mentioned. We received one estimate for this project just to give us and the church a sense of how much it would cost. And that was about $17,000 for the whole project. We, of course, will get more quotes depending on if council approves and authorizes me to sign this. And then we would go with the lowest quote. We'd obviously come back to council with that. But and I don't know if anyone from the church is here. Pastor Hitz, are you on the phone or on YouTube?
Yes, Victor, I am on the phone.
Is there anything you would like to add?
Oh, just wanted to make sure you could hear me. No, everything that you said is represented as we conversed, and it has been a pleasure working with you. Nothing to add unless there are any questions.
Questions at the table?
I have no questions.
Makes sense.
Yes. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Attorney Morris, we sure gone, wrote the lease.
Yeah, Attorney Raymer, yep. Yep. We sent it to him. He just essentially revised the old one and substituted the new clauses. If you want to open it up to public.
Mary Ellen?
I just wanted to know, in the original agreement, city was not required to plow the parking lot. Winter.
Correct.
Okay, that's still in there. I didn't-
So in this agreement, we're not plowing the lot. We did agree to once a year, if necessary, to remove any large snow piles that might be blocking parking spots that they have. But the church is still responsible for doing the plowing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other public comments in the room? Any public comment on the phone? I'll make a motion that we go ahead with the lease. Second.
Commissioner Turkis. Ben Leo.
Yes.
John Cox.
Yes.
CC Johnston.
Yes.
And Matt Bogira.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. So we will come back to you. I'll work with Pastor Hitz and we'll come back to you with some more estimates of from any other quotes. If not, we'll go with Spearlings as if they're the lowest. And then Pastor Hitz, thank you for your time and I'll be in touch with you.
Thank you so much, Victor, and thank you, Ford.
There's that quote. Okay. Item 3C. So this is the 150 West Bluff Vegetation Management Request. I believe must have been May of 2018 that I believe so, that Scotty Lancel of 150 West Bluff submitted a vegetation management request to remove, trim some trees on the bluff in order to improve review. That's in line with section F of our vegetation management policy, which was included in the packet. That request was was put on hold because the council had placed a moratorium on tree trimming as they revised the policy that we have. And after some edits to the policy, the moratorium was lifted, and then the city's arborist, Ben Veeling, filed the attached vegetation management report that you've read as required and outlined in that policy. Mr. Veeling's report is generally in line with the requirements of the policy. However, the revised vegetation management policy requires the matter to come to council if there is negative feedback from the public. The city received nearly 24 comments from neighbors and residents regarding the project. The vast majority were opposed to any trimming or tree removal on the bluff. Some of their major concerns included bluff stability, view aesthetics of the bluff itself, runoff and flooding concerns, the need for a bluff management plan or a study of the bluff, and health of the trees in the urban forest. Those in favor of the request generally agree that the responsible trimming and removal of trees as outlined in the policy addresses many of the potential negative opposition. So council's decision here is to decide whether or not to allow the vegetation management request to proceed. So I propose that I'll have Mr. Veeling present his report to council. Then council opens it up to public comment to get their opinion, and then we close the public comment section, and then council discusses amongst themselves before they decide the matter, if that's okay with council. All right, Mr. Veeling's here, so if you want to.
You want me to stand up or move?
You can
or-
stand up, or yeah, just so they can hear you in the speakerphone, yeah. Sorry, if not project.
Be front and
Excuse
center?
me.
No, right there.
Can you all speak up a little bit?
Yep, we will. We'll speak up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, just speak up a little louder, so I'm having a really hard time hearing you.
I didn't hear that.
And please keep your phones on mute. Thank you.
So, short and sweet, I walked the bluff, counted 59 trees that were in the area that they want to manage. I logged them with the GPS unit so that we have an idea of how far apart they are, and then collected data on how sizes are comparative. Most of the species that are there are considered either weeds or fast-growing trees, probably because of prior management conditions on the bluff. Most of these trees, when we say trees barely meet that minimum, they are trunk diameters that are much less than 8 or 12 inches in diameter, so they're not loggable. The vast majority of these are stump shoots. They've been cut several times. The stumps continue to regenerate. And what I'm seeing is that what Mother Nature is telling us is that we could probably cut this pretty hard and it would come back probably in less than a decade. And probably with very, very little dieback on the stumps. The trees aren't actually dying, they're just being shortened. There are some things to note. There is no ground layer that's present except for invasive species. So a lot of stuff that's growing in the ground layer would be things like garlic mustard and other plants that we don't like, which are not high on the browse list. There's really strong evidence that white-tailed deer have been significantly stifling any regrowth. The species that are there likely to be there predominate for a very long time. Any Spartans in the room? Oh, I'm so sad. The reason I say this is because Dr. Beale's experiment, which is world famous, is that Dr. Beale took weed seeds from 1879 and then buried them all over campus. And every 2 decades, we dig up another jar, put it in a greenhouse to see what grows. And 141 years later, we still get germination. So what's on the side of the hill, what's been dumped there for the last 50 yeyears, which is a lot of yard debris containing tattry and honeysuckle and autumn, that stuff will continue to grow. It is not likely, and when I say not likely, highly improbable that plants will disappear from that hillside no matter what we do. With that, the vegetation management request that Scotty Lancel had was to remove 10 trees of select, I see that as being consistent with what the city's policy is. And I don't think there's going to be any issue with somebody taking 10 of the list of trees out of that area. Any questions?
You kind of talk
No.
fast, and it's hard to, you go through it, that it's hard to comprehend all of it. And what I get out of it is all the things that you're talking about are, have names that I'm not familiar with, number one. And if they had regular plants like they do on the east, regular trees that we're familiar with, and they have them on the east side. And that's why you have trees that are grown up high enough that you just trim the lower part of the trees and you have your view. I mean, I've seen 100 pictures all looking the same. I don't see any in this room, however, of the East Bluff standing in front of their house and looking, and it's a beautiful setting. And there's lots of trees, but they eye level or house level, they're not, you don't have the vegetation.
Is there a question in there?
Yeah. I've been here 50 years, and this comes up, well, Victor would be the fourth manager. And this is not anything new. Somebody buys a house on West Bluff and they immediately want to have a view. They don't consider it before they purchase the house, obviously. And my question is, why can't we have regular trees phased in? Is there such an animal that, like, a tree that would be appropriate, that would have enough leaves on it at a higher level? I don't know, maybe I'm, asking for something that's impossible, I don't know. But it seems to me that I've walked it many times. I live on 4th. I don't live on the bluff side, thank goodness. And I've just seen a lot of problems through the years.
So, I mean, there's a really good picture right behind Matt, or Mike, sorry. And there are no large trees there. And unfortunately, they have not been allowed to get any higher than the guardrail except for a few.
Yeah, because we go through this every 10 years or so.
And the problem that we run into is that we have fast-growing weak-wooded species that have been consistently mismanaged. I mean, so the policy before 1996 was that people would top the trees, which imparts a huge amount of decay.
They're not supposed to, though. They must have done it in the middle of the night.
No, this has changed over time.
Right.
But it doesn't make those trees go away. They are still there. They are still decaying. They are still hanging over houses. And so the best effect for the city is to remove those trees in a regimented fashion so that they are not hanging over houses and then allow something else to grow. The problem we run into is that we have differences in species. So in 1992, Dr. Cobasso of Michigan State organized a plan where they were going to clear a small area and replant that with common landscape species, hoping that would take over. 100% of those plants have died. So those plants no longer exist. The problem that you run into is exactly what I stated earlier, which is that the species that are best adapted to occupy that hillside grow. And so there are a couple things that are going to need to happen. One is that there would take huge management issues. We would have to put a lot of energy into doing things like spraying and roguing out other species. We'd have to strip topsoil. We'd have to poison a lot of things to make other species grow. We would also have to limit deer activity, which nobody seems to want to do. So we can't do that. I mean, so like red oak regeneration anywhere in the city is probably about zero, right? So the red oaks that are on East Bluff, which are also on private property, which have been handled differently over the last 50 years,
Absolutely.
they will not regenerate. I mean, when those die, and the way that they've been handled, they are likely to be full of decay. In 20 some years of dealing with those trees on both sides of the bluff, I would not want those trees over my house. Just because a tree is green does not mean it's healthy. I mean, we have to understand that there are two things going on there. We have symplastic health, and we have aplastic health. So you've got the biology of the tree, and you've got the structure of the tree. And those two things are not connected. The wood that holds the tree up does not really carry out any process. That's going to be different tissues. So the cambium, the leaves, those things can survive even though a tree is hollow. And what we see a lot of times when these trees fail or they're removed is that they have vast amounts of decay. It is a matter of time before these things fall. And so one of the things that's been an advantage to the city of Harbor Springs is that there are people that are willing to meet a goal and remove some of these trees. They pay for the management costs for the city. I'm not saying that it's impossible to do that, but the other problem you run into is the power line clearing right at the top. So on West Bluff, what you have is a power line with requirements to have space. And so on East Bluff, that stuff has either been moved or buried, or there is a larger road right of way which allows trees to be farther away from the power lines. So consistently, anything that gets to be 30 feet is going to get cut. And there's just really no way to manage that without making other considerations. I mean, it's not a real simple answer. We've thought about this for 20 some years. And unfortunately, this policy does not take into account anything other than whether or not we can keep vegetation on the hillside. in my professional opinion, that is true. It is still gonna have plants that grow, they will still be woody, and they will regenerate in an aggressive manner. If we want to change how we promote for a single species, then we were gonna have to come up with a different policy. So I'm sorry, does that answer your question?
Yes and no.
What's the average height of the bluff from the base of it?
Can you
to
please state your name for the record?
Wayne Avis,
Thanks.
476 4th Street. What's the average distance from the base of the bluff where the trees are existing to the top of the bluff? And how much, the second part of that question is how tall are the trees above that are interfering with people's views?
So, I mean, it varies depending on the point that we look at. And
Let's say
so,
from the base of it.
from which point?
When you came to my house last year or 2 years ago and cut the trees at the very base of the bluff because they interfered with people's view up top, you cut essentially, I think, somewhere about a 50-foot tree to the top of the bluff, and then another 20 feet above that. So a 70-foot tree got cut down because 20 feet of it got in the other people's view, in the way of their view. And my question for you is, does it make sense to cut down a 70-foot tree because the top 20 feet of it or 15 feet of it blocked somebody's view of something that may be a half a mile or quarter mile down the road from them? Because what happened with my house is the people who requested it, happened at Scotty's house, is they're requesting it, is they're not actually, they're kind of missing, like, yeah, I have a view of the water, kind of like you're looking out your front yard, you're looking across the street and you're looking into the water. No, it's like, I want to look, see the harbor from here. That tree is in the way. Take that tree down because it's interfering with my view. It's not like I'm looking straight out there in front of
Mr.
my
Davis,
house.
does your comment have, or does
Yes,
your
my
question have
question is
anything to
back
do with the policy in
the
front of us?
First question, how tall is the bluff at that point, and how tall the trees are you taking down, and why you cannot, as it has been done for many, many years, trim those trees to give everybody the best world. The people.
Okay,
love
so
the bluff
this
view.
question's been asked and answered several times. It's been asked and answered many, many times in front of this council and other councils, which is that we cannot top trees. There's 60 years of research that indicates that that's not appropriate. I mean, the ANSI A300 pruning standard, which has been around for 60 years, clearly indicates that we cannot move the tops of trees.
Why not?
I can educate everybody on arboriculture if you want me to do that.
Simple words, why not?
Kill the tree.
Well, if it doesn't
Did it
kill the tree, it
before.
rots the tree.
It
So
did it
then it's a
before.
liability that.
All
the
those
city has
other
to-
trees that have been pruned are still alive.
That's not true. That's not even close to being true. Okay.
Mr. Davis,
What's wrong
we've been
with
through-
pollarding a tree?
Excuse me, Scotty Lansing, can I please?
It's not your turn, Ms. Lansell. We're doing comment in the room first.
So,
You'll get your chance.
Question about.
so
your area.
if I make a recommendation here, Mayor, is let's collect all the questions and comments, and then we can close the public hearing session, and then the council can ask, if they choose to ask Mr. Vealing, if they want to know those answers to those questions, they can ask Mr. Vealing themselves.
That would make more sense.
So then that way you don't have to
Sure.
go in a one-on-one, and that way the council can decide what is important, what is not important for you to answer. So, thanks for the report.
Did we say it?
Yeah, just stay here. Yeah, you can sit for now. So we'll go to the in-house crowd, then the phone, and then YouTube. And please state your name for the record.
Dana Mulder. Hi, I'm on the tree advisory board, and I support the tree management program. I think it's great. I think he did a very thoughtful job in his report. I do have a question. Do you get a choice on what trees are removed, or is the homeowner requesting certain trees to be removed? Because I saw in the report there's some nice hardwood trees, and then there's the softwood trees, as you said.
The policy does not allow for favoring of species, and so it has to be consistent with whatever the policy is, which is generally a 10% removal, and it's dependent on what else is growing there, but we can't select for one or another.
So you don't have a say in what 10% come out?
I can suggest, but that's not anything that I have a say in. Nor do I,
If
and
the
I,
people that are are talking, we can't hear them on the phone.
Yeah, and let's again collect the questions and then answer them later.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Direct the question to council.
So the question is, what species of trees are we removing?
Yeah, and does Ben have a choice?
Specifics. All right, next question, please.
If the measurement of the trees in the survey is all trees over 4 inches in diameter, how tall is the average 4-inch tree? Because then the question is, what the actual statement is, when they were cut down behind my house, the 4-inch trees were not cut down. The 10 to 15-inch trees that were much taller were cut down. So what we've done is created a false calculus by including the numerator that is of the trees to be cut down, a denominator of a great number of trees, so it looks like a smaller number. Really what you're doing is taking down a percentage. So what trees will be taken down is the question, and can we see what trees they are?
That's like 6 questions in one.
Oh, I got a lot to read here.
Which trees can they mark and take down?
Could you please describe what the different colors denote of these? I think they're GPS pings of specific trees. There's blue, purple, and green.
So,
No, man, just wait.
Okay.
Get all the questions. Ms. Wheeler?
Who has been managing the West Bluff since 1995, since I moved in?
Okay. Anything else from the room? Yep, Billy?
Can I take this on?
Yeah.
My name's Elizabeth Kirby. My property was devastated in 2018, and I'm part of the reason for the moratorium. I've lost 6 trees on my property alone due to flooding. 2 of them have drowned, and 2 of them have blown over, and 2 of them are struggling to survive. The trees that been okay to cut down were in a cluster, and I tried to point out that you can say, if there are 100 trees in this room, but you only cut the ones that are right here all together, that doesn't really balance out for the 10%. And this is the same situation that's happening again. It's going to be behind Miss Hudson's house, Holly Hudson's house. I'm a homeowner 2 doors down from Holly Hudson's with my brother at 258 4th. And it is quite traumatic for me to see this coming back on the forefront. I don't know if council realizes, but since these trees have been cut down, and I understand the notion that some are rotted, but the ones cut down behind Mr. Avis and my home were fabulous and not rotted, and their diameters were like this. I would like to know, I'd like council to note that the 4th Street homeowners have to shoulder the burden of this action. And I would say that we could do a tally. It could be a private tally. We could write on a piece of paper. People could submit their numbers. But I would be very easy. It would be very easy for me to say that it's over $200,000, maybe even $500,000 that the 4th Street homeowners have had to shoulder in remediation for this action. And I don't believe anyone's ever talked about that before. And I think it's really incorrect for one person to get a view, a peek of the bay, or an enhanced view of the water for the summer when they can see it almost all year round. And we have to shoulder the burden financially to preserve our homes. And it's just a financial burden to our neighborhood that seems unjust. And I would like to know where the funds went that Mrs. Baracco spent on her realized tree removal that affected George Pete's home, my home, Jill Whalen's home, and Mr. Avis's home. Thank you.
Any other questions in the room? All right,
There will be additional public comment after this, correct?
there will now.
There will not?
There will now.
Okay. Okay,
This is your chance. And keep it brief, please.
I'm going to stand up and take my time. Thank you.
I get my gavel out.
You have to go for it. Okay. Dear City Council, my name is Wayne Avis. I'm a year-round resident and have lived at 476 4th Street since 1989. I've watched your neighborhood grow and change over the last 31 years. When I bought here, I was one of the few seasonal owners. Seasonal owners. Over the years, the street has gone from year-round residents to mostly seasonal, now to more year-round residents. Behind my house, there used to be 30-plus old-growth trees. Over the years, they have removed many trees. That started in 1995, I think. I bought again like in '89. In the last year, they removed at least 7 to 8 trees and have additional groups slated for removal. There are only 13 old-growth trees left behind me, and at this rate, in a few years, will not be any left. I'm writing this letter because I'm very concerned about the city's removal of trees on the bluff behind us to give the people on West Bluff a better view of the water and to increase the value of their homes. A request to cut down many trees behind 212 4th Street has been made by Scotty Lansell at 150 West Bluff. Notice is only given to the quote affected homeowners and not to all residents that will be affected. In the last instance, and even people across the street did not get notice. The carts did not get notice, even though trees directly across the street from them being cut down for Scotty's better view. Cut down trees in my backyard. It was done to give West Bluff owner a better view of the harbor, even though when they cut down mine, he was several blocks away. And he's saying, okay, it's not the ones I said before, it's not the ones in front of my house, it's the ones way down there. And that means every tree in the bluff could go if someone wants to spend the money to take them down under that policy. Even though it is more than 2 blocks west of my house. Given that logic, the West Bluff owner blocks from a house can request the trees behind any house to be removed. It's not just to see the water in front of their house, but to look miles to the east to see Petoskey State Park and the harbor. Right of view. The West Bluff owners believe since they have more expensive homes than 4th Street owners, they're entitled to have trees cut down blocks away from their homes to improve their views for 90 days. It's only for 90 days a year the leaves are up in blockhead. That's like saying they're entitled to better schools than others in Harbor Springs because they pay more taxes. And you have letters in your file from owners on the bluffs saying exactly that they have paid more, they pay more taxes, they deserve a better view. Hypocrisy of cutting down trees versus appeal to plant new trees. All this cutting down and not replanting trees to give entitled people a better view flies in the face of Harbor Springs Donate a Tree program still active on your website. How can the city council justify cutting down irreplaceable trees to plant new ones somewhere else? 10% versus reality of trees cut. The tree survey methodology, there is no reality test of what actually happens. When the criteria for removing trees is minimized by saying it is only 10% trees surveyed over 4 inches in diameter, does not reflect the reality that in my backyard, the only trees cut down were over 10 inches, more like 15 inches in diameter. What is being removed is not the trees that have a specific diameter, but trees that are tall enough to have the audacity to interfere with someone's quote view. The reality is happening, what really is happening is that only the tall trees that might interfere with the view are cut down. That 10% might be 100% of the old growth trees. If you measure, you survey 100 trees, and there's only 10 of them that are old growth, and those 10% are cut down, that's 100% of those trees. Even though it's only 10%, it's 100% of the real trees that matter. And if they're not cut down the first year, they can be taken down the next year. And they cut down a 7-foot tree to the ground because the top 10 feet interfere with the view is irresponsible. Ecology. The trees provide many positive benefits to the bluff, as previously stated. The city has recognized the benefit of trees by trying to get public donations for new trees. They provide habitat for the birds and animals we are trying to protect, from the squirrels and chipmunks to deer, foxes, and rabbits. They even provide protection to a motorist who may accidentally go over the bluff by stopping a car from hitting the bottom, which has happened. There are only a limited number of trees holding the bluff in place, and when a 50-year-old or older tree is cut down, there will be fewer trees to hold that bluff in place. Damages. The trees, most importantly, provide stability to the fragile bluff. Every grain of sand that is washed down the bottom of the bluff is gone from Hyde Park forever. Every grain of sand washed down, is not there to protect the state-owned roadway from collapsing. The stability of this very wet bluff with
water running down at 365 days a year is compromised and threatened by removal of trees. In addition to physical stability, the trees also absorb incredible amounts of water that will only invade more people's homes. This is a picture of what's opened up 119 right above my house. Fence posts and baling wire.
Mr. Davis, you've had 5 minutes. We've got a lot of people that want to comment. We're gonna have to move on.
I got a couple more pages here, if I
No,
might, sir.
I'm sorry.
You're
We've
cutting
got
me.
other people that need to speak.
Okay,
Everyone gets their chance.
well then, Mr. Mayor, we'll have these printed up and delivered to every homeowner who wants them. And I do have one more thing I'm gonna say. And you can, notice not to all citywide concern referendum. Notice of this most recent land request to destroy the bluff by cutting down trees is only given to quote adjacent properties. This is a public matter since it affects all Harbor Springs residents and should be decided by a ballot initiative, not by a biased group. Let's bring this to vote and see what the city residents really want.
Thank you. Ms. Wheeler?
My name is Jill Whalen, and I live at 524 Fourth, and I just saw the pictures zoom by when I sent a letter to the city council of what I took this past spring. So they're on there somewhere, 524 4th Street. And it's pretty, I mean, it's scary. I had to have my whole foundation systems of Michigan. I had to have my whole basement, my whole crawl space. My house is under siege. And I doubt that any more trees will go down. There, that's it. That is my backyard. It's completely muddy. The cattails are about to encroach me. I just want to know why, here's a question, why is it more important that one person on top of the bluff is more important than here is city property all along 4th Street? Why would they get more of a shrift than all of us homeowners at the bottom who are suffering? And I've already suffered, so it's kind of too late for me, as you can see. But I would certainly hope that other people would not have to suffer the same fate.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room?
I'm George Pete. I live at 508 4th Street. I'm neighbors with Jill. So I've got a reasonable background in forest ecology and a bit of landscape management. I've read Ben's report, and it's all pretty accurate and pretty normal for like what you would expect from a professional arborist. I would say that the majority of our problem is with the management policy and not necessarily with what Ben has reported. I believe that we should be selecting for species. There is a way. I mean, he's talking about all of these seeds that are in the seed bank and, that can germinate, which is all absolutely true. However, there are ways of managing these landscapes in these areas for specific species. Some of them are a little bit radical, which I'm kind of in favor of, but that's a totally different situation. The biggest problem that I think Ben touched on it is with the deer. They eat absolutely everything that is trying to grow in. All of the species that we have now are intolerant pioneer type species that grow very quickly, stump sprout, and have all these crazy ways of regenerating themselves very easily. In order to get the desired species, the hard maple, the oaks, these more mature big trees that everyone likes, you have to have a lot of shade and a lot of time. And this is going to be a long process if we want to kind of get the bluff to a sort of a stable, mature looking landscape, sort of more similar to the East Bluff. And that starts with the management policy. It seems to be a little bit flawed, as Wayne pointed out, with being able to kind of fudge the numbers and, increasing the number of trees in the denominator and things like that. It's a little bit flaky and a little bit rude. Ben certainly has the ability and the knowledge to go through and probably do some timber stand improvement, without actually using a lot of herbicides, but taking quite a bit more time to select for more desirable species and to try to get rid of some of the weed type species. A lot of that would also depend on curbing the deer problem. My suggestion to that, in case anyone's interested, would be to build a fence exclosure around the bluff. Sounds crazy, temporary, expensive, yes, with a couple of wildlife corridors so that deer and all the animals can still get down to the Roniker Nature Preserve where the deer like to bed down and stuff, things like that. But anyway, different story. Just wanted to make my opposition of cutting the trees on the bluff clear until we can get a better and more sustainable management program in place.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room?
I just have one more thought. We have a tree advisory board meeting on Friday, and, one thought could be to just table this discussion and see whether we should have another look at the tree management program, where we could select the trees that we want, to be kept and.
Good. Good comment.
George P. again, another comment that resonated with me that Wayne made. This is a public space. It's a centerpiece of our community. It should be publicly addressed and everyone should be notified about these types of things happening. I'm pretty much immediately affected, and Elizabeth received a certified letter in the mail and I received nothing. I thought that was a little bizarre, but.
I only received it because I'm co-owner with the home at 258 with my brother. So it was deemed that that home and two others were the only ones that were really involved.
Okay. Anyone else here? All right, 3 times. Anyone on the phone would like to make a comment?
Yes,
Can you state your name and your address?
Scotty Lansell, 150 West Plum. I would like to say that firstly, when I moved into this house, I had a perfect view of the bay. And because of this 2.5 year issue, the trees are now grown and I can't even see the lake. But my intent is, firstly, I want to make it clear to everybody that I do not want a clear cut, I do not want to top, I want to maintain the trees. And I really truly feel that if you love the trees, everybody says they do, they should maintain and clip them like you do your hair and your nails. And I'd also like to say that, I know Ben's not going to go in there and hack them up. And I've been paying to get them trimmed for 10 years since I've been here. And it's been perfectly fine. And it's not just for my enjoyment. It's also because lots of people go driving down 119 and they see the beautiful lake, and those people might go into town and shop and buy things and eat food in our town. So that was pretty much my only point, but I want to make it clear that I do not want a clear cut. I want to maintain trees. I just want to get back on track like I was 2.5 years ago, and I want to continue to maintain the trees in my life sightline. And I did have a view when I first moved in here, and that's why I bought this house. So I might as well move to the country if I'm never going to be able to trim these trees. So that's my only point.
All right, thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the phone?
Thomas Sheldon, 258 4th Street.
The floor is yours.
Scotty, thanks for your comments. It cleared up a couple of questions I had. I didn't understand your original request to ask for trimming. When
This is
the
Patty
timberwolf
Lamar.
reports,
Someone's got their phone out, if they could mute it.
okay. Scotty, thanks for the clarification. I didn't understand your original request that said trim to improve the view for 130, 150, 180 Bluff for tourists. So you kind of clarified that. And I also didn't understand the comment that you would like to maintain, that a responsible tree-loving person maintains trees every year like I've been doing for the last 7 years. Therefore, this will be my goal to maintain the trees until I sell my house or I die. That was your Wednesday, May 13th note to Victor. So thanks for that clarification. What's strange to me is on the very first sentence of the Timberwolf tree care proposal, they jump to, this allows us to remove city-owned trees. I don't know how we jump from, I'd like to trim the trees, to Timberwolf saying, hooray, we get to remove trees. Maybe the council can explain that.
We'll take that up. Thank you. Anyone else on the phone for public comment?
Hello, this is John Carlo, 105 East Bluff. I'm 3 or 4 houses east of Scotty, and similar to her, when we moved in 10 years ago, our view was much improved. I've been waiting patiently.
The delay, can you go over, this is Patty Laveron.
Because of the moratorium to also trim trees and again, trees and grass grow, they need to be trimmed for views to be maintained. And like Scotty, I think many people appreciate these views. It's not just selfish homeowners. So thanks for listening. Thanks for all the time you're spending on this, and look forward to your decision.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barlow. Patty, I think you're trying to say something? Anyone else on the phone?
Okay, Patty Laveron, I'm trying again.
All right. You're up.
Can you all hear me? There's a delay. it seems
Yep.
like.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Is she on YouTube?
Okay, can you all hear me?
Can you mute your YouTube or your computer?
Okay, so I live right next to Holly Hudson.
Ma'am, could you mute your computer? That's what the problem is.
Okay. So I live right next to Holly Hudson, and we bought our house, it's 310 4th Street. And I'm looking at the policy of vegetation management states the preference should be given to trimming trees for a view to the trees. And cutting these trees down is not giving the preference to trimming. That's one thing. And then someone else in the bluff, another letter that we received in our packet, said that the trees, whether the view was paramount in their decision to buy their property. Well, there are trees and the landscaping was paramount, in our decision to buy our property. Number 3 is, I'm looking at all these dots on this survey. I have no idea what trees you're planning on cutting down. And if I have rotting trees or trees that are unhealthy or unstable, then I would, of course, be reasonable and interested in seeing which trees that you would want to take down. But again, I have no idea. And after seeing the pictures of other people's properties destroyed by taking down trees, I'm just adamantly opposed to just, to you all making this decision without all the neighbors involved. The bluff view improvement increases their value, but then taking down our trees and destroying our backyards decreases our value and land of our property. And again, I think that all these trees should be tagged, and all the impacted homeowners, that's basically everyone in the Harbor Springs area, should be notified, and it should go out to a vote. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else on the phone for public comment? No?
Jill Whalen, 524. It's just a little question of should it be the president that somebody who requests a tree cutting on the top of the bluff take precedence over the whole city bluff and all the people at the bottom that are affected by it. One person at the top or two people or whatever.
On YouTube, we have one comment from Mark Rundell. What about stabilizing the bluff by terracing?
Top of Nelson Street's a good example of that not working.
All right.
So if you want to close, it's up to you.
Well, I think we're going to close the public comment section and discuss it here at the table. See where we're going to go through some of these questions.
Mayor, if I just can answer one of the questions on the technicality about delivery of notices. So the policy requires us to only deliver to adjacent property owners and adjacent property owners to the property that's making the request, as well as placing a notification in a local newspaper. So that's the process we did. We sent out 13, I believe, certified receipt letters to the adjacent property owners, as well as to those on 4th Street that would be affected by adjacent to any of the trees. So that's an issue of policy as opposed to what staff did and didn't do.
And it was in fact in the paper.
It was in the Harbor Light, yes.
Okay. Got a whole slew of questions here. Anybody want to ask Ben anything?
Evergreens. I mean, the days of maples and red oaks and all that are gone. I mean, what about evergreens?
So red oaks are shade intolerant and it's too wet to grow them on.
Well, I know, but I mean, I've done a lot of work on that end of the bluff. I know what the water conditions are, but like evergreens are getting something that will grow in there other than the shrubs
It won't grow.
and stuff.
I had 2 planted, they died.
They did a test, I don't know what it was, 25, 30 years ago, where they cleared a section, I think underneath Washington Street, trying to plant a bunch of different trees, and they all died. Everything they planted, they died.
So that was a combination of deer browse and over competition from.
Just so they can hear you in the yeah.
So, I mean, so the reason that there are very few conifers on the hillside is because of deer browse and over competition from species that are there. And the most common species on the hillside is Norway maple. That's the large tree that you see. And Norway maple is not an old growth species. It is an introduced species. A lot of places. So old growth means it's a tree that was here before white people showed up. Okay, so that would be a tree that is several hundred years old. Most of these are things that are replacement for either nursery stock that was planted in someone's backyard or escaped seeds. So like Norway maples on Mackinac Island are being rogued out. They cut them down and destroy them because they take over areas where things like sugar maple should grow. It's considered an invasive species in most parts of the state and other parts of the country. So, and unfortunately, what that's going to do is this is a tree which has a really unfortunate side effect, which is allelopathy. As it grows, it poisons the environment to other things. So it promotes for its own seeds, and then it kills other species, like sugar maple, like red oak, like a lot of the other things that we see on East Bluff won't grow in the climate that's there. The other problem we run into is water movement. I mean, it's historically been wet there. A lot of the pictures show things that are like things that would tolerate that kind of water would be things like balsam fir, white spruce, and possibly cedars. But the problem is that we've got a huge white-tailed deer population, so they won't let those things regenerate, and not likely to be able to shade of a Norway maple. It's just the way that it is. Box elder is another common species that has the same property.
Thank you.
Could you describe the?
This is the council session, yeah.
Just want to run down the questions.
Yeah. Someone asked about the specific trees and whose choice it is to cut down said tree.
So,
versus say invasive tree versus a keeper tree, or I guess, is that part of your process?
There is no part of the So it does not ask me for an opinion or what my favor would be. And we don't have any clear direction as to what we're trying to maneuver towards.
So, and to go off of Ben's point is that the policy states that the specialist will meet with the property owner to review the property owner's goals and to assess the options and vegetation management practices that achieves the property owner's objectives, as well as ensuring sustained growth. So that's what our arborist's job is to do.
Cutting to improve the view, it doesn't matter if it's a good tree or a bad tree.
Correct.
Well, I
It
mean,
also says here to ensure sustained growth and health of the vegetation, yeah.
so there is no calculation currently for quality of tree. And that's a really ambiguous question. And
I was just gonna say.
Mary Ellen.
if it doesn't-
so the if there is enough tree that it can be pruned to the NCA 300 pruning standard, then the recommendation as per policy would be to prune the tree. If that can't be attained, then it falls within the 10% removal criteria of the policy, and then that calculation will be made once we start to select trees. At this point, we just have an inventory, and we know that we can select 5.9 trees that are removed, and by definition, that is killing the tree. Evidence currently shows that most of the trees that have been selected for removal previously have regenerated, so they were not killed, they still exist. And so part of my recommendation is that if we are trying to maintain growth, taking carbon out of the atmosphere, putting it into plant growth, and continuing that cycle by allowing natural regeneration, removing 10% of the trees and actually killing them would still allow for that to take place, and it would not reduce the numbers of things that are going to sequester carbon.
But how are the trees selected? How do you choose the specific trees to cut?
At this point, we have no trees selected other than the DERB 5.9. So at that point, if this is approved, then we will start discussing what view lines we can start to work on and where those trees would come from.
So that's determined after approval?
Currently, as per policy, there's no instruction that says that we have to do that.
I know I'm not supposed to talk now, but
The specialist
policy
will-
is what?
The specialist will provide a preliminary report with recommendations for tree trimming, tree removal, tree replacement, and other plantings. Does it imply that the trees to be removed are presented prior to approval?
So my recommendation is that we can remove 6 trees, that it will not likely adversely affect the regeneration of the hillside or regeneration of the resource, or they'll affect the species component. And that replanting trees is probably unnecessary because there's such a huge seed bank that what will happen is natural selection will continue to carry this process forward.
Well, then it feels like the policy is flawed. I mean, when I pushed, and you know, because you were involved when I pushed, I was able to achieve some changes. But my original push was for a comprehensive policy for the public areas so that we didn't deal with it piecemeal. And that didn't fly. So we reduced it from 20 to 10 and added notification of adjacent property owners. And I'm glad that it's yielding results because clearly there are objections to what we're proposing to do. And I still feel uncomfortable with the piecemeal approach to carve it up and say specific resident asks for a specific improvement. I think we need a comprehensive policy where the city defines what do we want our views to be? How are we going to get there? What's involved and implied by removing certain trees and not others? If we continue to deal with it piecemeal, we're going to be back here in another couple of years and, deal with this again. I'm not in favor of that. And to me, when this was written and approved, it did imply that A, you would be selecting specific trees, and B, it would be part of the original proposal. I'm not comfortable agreeing to, let's move forward, and we don't know what trees we're taking. That doesn't make sense to me. And if it's a policy issue, then let's deal with that. When we did the last change to the policy, which was drawn out and painful, I had suggested involving the tree board, and at that point, that wasn't an option. There's a lot of expertise there that I think should be brought to bear, and they might be the right group to be involved in the development of something where we can deal with a view. And I agree, this isn't just residents. We're a resort town, we're a tourist town. Every time I drive out with 119, I'd like to enjoy the view too. The question is how we're gonna get there over time, so that we don't come back and revisit this issue yet again.
Color of the GPS marking?
So, the original markings were just the tallies that, or the plants that we could see. This is the stuff that's immediately in the view shed. Then we ruled out some of this stuff because of the angle of observation doesn't actually lend a view of Lake Michigan. This is stuff that ends up being on the outside of that. Some of the stuff is actually involved. It doesn't have anything to do with species. It's just different series of collection of data points. So walking downhill, taking all the points as you're walking downhill the data collector, then putting it all on a map and looking at it to see what it is, because you can't see this or Lake Michigan when you're on the hillside. So, and then looking to see which ones were added. Some of these were ones that we had some confusion about where property lines were until we located them. Actually, this is a
Good.
so it's a timing mark, not a species mark.
Okay. So I have a question about who manages West Bluff, and I guess I can probably answer that. Most of the property owners manage West Bluff. Or, no, we manage West Bluff.
Yeah, which property owners manage West Bluff?
The city manages West Bluff. My mistake. I was thinking East Bluff. I get confused. Do you catch any questions?
So I got a question about who gets notice. Why is one person made more important than the rest of the residents when choosing to select down, cut, harvest trees? From George Pete, problem is with the policy. Should we be selecting for species? The biggest problem is the deer, proposal of a deer fence, but also proposal of a comprehensive bluff policy versus individual piecemeal approach. There was a suggestion by Dana Mulder to table this to the tree advisory board to get their opinion and feedback on whether it's on this particular. I did send an email out to the tree advisory board on this particular vegetation management request, so they had an opportunity to read it and submit their comments. But I think Dana was talking regarding to the tree policy in general. Who gets notice? I had another question about that. Stabilize the bluff by terracing. That was from Mark Rundell. Some other comments about, I wasn't sure about Mrs. Baraka's property, where do the funds go for that? I'm not sure what that question was related to.
I can clarify that.
If council would like that.
All right.
Brief.
I was promised I would get new trees planted in payment for saying yes to have it cut down behind my house. Or maybe it went into a fund for the city.
And who made this promise?
Mrs. Baracco via Melissa Adeline Supernaut. And I understood that when you guys okayed trees to be cut down on the bluff, they paid into a fund where a tree was planted somewhere in the city. No?
No.
Okay.
There is a fee, but that's to cover the costs of processing the application, getting the report done, so.
$250, right?
500.
500.
Okay.
Basically, that was done.
Sorry, I misunderstood the situation.
That's okay.
That's why we're here.
Can I ask one question?
Briefly.
Quick question. In the end, who is it that actually decides what tree gets cut? As I understand it, it is him and Scotty Lansell are the only two people who actually say, cut down that tree, despite what size and what the survey says. Is that correct?
Sounds correct to me.
Currently, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what John's question is have a little more say in maybe what being selective. Changing that policy where maybe your recommendation comes to us for site.
Site plan.
Yeah, so we can
Almost
review it.
The only view is an aerial view from Google Earth, I think. Why is there not a good drone shot showing what it looks like from ground from the neighborhood and from across the street. I can't tell anything from that about what the actual effect will be visually from where you're cutting.
I drive by there 100 times a day and I can't tell you what it looks like.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And are you
And
standing
what it
on
will
a
look like. The
sidewalk
question
or are
is,
you
what
in
does
a
it look like
house?
now?
What?
What will it look like?
Standing on the sidewalk in front of the house, you can see its GPS mark.
So to answer the simple question, I have to touch the tree to actually log in the GPS unit. So I have to be the,
But that's.
I have to measure the resource.
Yeah,
have to
but
walk the
those
hill.
are, to your point, on her sidewalk, that's where you start from.
So, yeah, I mean, so that's just a point to start plotting lines so we can see about where somebody might be looking. Trying to figure out which trees we have in discussion when we file a report.
I mean, I like Scotty's thing where she doesn't want to clear it like some of the other properties, she wants to. So I mean,
Well, they're only gonna take 6 trees out of that.
right, so I don't, I think the policy needs to be looked at, I wasn't involved when I was having, where we can be a little more hands-on.
Well, and to Ben's point, it might be that in order to identify specific trees to be cut, he needs to have more information about what the objective is, which isn't in it.
But I'm not opposed to having the tree board.
All right, well, what's on the table here is Scotty Lancel's request to cut trees, so either someone makes a motion to approve it, or someone makes a motion not to approve it, and we can hash out the details for the next 25 years, like we've been doing the last 25 years.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of emotions going on. You know, maybe we do need to sit down and put together a bluff management program for West Bluff going forward. But the decision we need to make right now is to allow Lancel to move ahead and remove 6 trees to maintain the bluff or improve her view, depending on how you look at it.
Can I ask one quick question? How many applications do you have pending for tree removal?
There's one more that I believe Ben is working on. Two more.
Right, yeah.
So it's not just this.
Are they East Bluff or West Bluff?
We don't have any
East Bluff public property.
jurisdiction over West Bluff other than the right of way of the
East
city,
Bluff.
which is actually the large trees on.
No, that's.
So it's another one on West Bluff.
I would like to make one comment since I haven't spoken yet. My name is Debbie Taggart. I live at 555 East Bay Street. I have friends that live on 4th Street under that bluff. And I used to love to look at the trees there, and it is the ugliest sight I've ever seen. So you may like the water view. I kind of liked the trees. And for 9 months out of the year, it is horrifically ugly with all the dead trees on the ground, and it's just been chewed up. And even now, it's not as full as it used to be. So who protects that view for the people who live there? Why is it always focused on the people on the bluff? And when in the world did people get to control their vertical view? This is the first place I've ever lived where somebody has the right to control their vertical view of something else. It certainly didn't work for the people on Bay Street who lost their view with Irish. So, you know, it doesn't make sense to me that this beautiful view of trees is now being destroyed for somebody else's beautiful view of the water. And that's all I'd like to say.
I have a comment.
All right.
I'm Jill Faley, and I live at 471 Glen Drive. And after being here this evening, I care about Harbor Springs. And I think what I would recommend is reviewing this policy. I believe it's outdated. It was created in 1994. I think it needs to be updated, reevaluated. And I think the tree board needs to work with the city council in making some revisions to the policy.
Thank you.
Well, why don't we just make a motion to have that reviewed and then come back to this?
Well, no, the only thing we can make a motion on is
cut or don't cut.
Cut or don't.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor because there's a request and we over that due diligence to either give her a yes or no. Yeah.
Wait, this is Tom Sheldon. I'm confused. The request was to trim. How did we jump to cut?
The policy allows, Mr. Sheldon, the policy allows the first I would say sentence of the policy says the city may permit limited trimming, removal, or replacement of such vegetation. So it's not just about trimming, it's about trimming, removal, and or replacement.
Understood, but the requester, Scotty, said, I'd like to trim the trees. How is the council jumping to remove?
We are jumping to remove, she
Misspoke.
She just said she misspoke.
Okay, well, words are important. Part of the charter also says that the property owner agrees to pay for the purchase and planting of trees to replace the trees removed as a result of the request made. Now, Timberwolf says it's impossible to replant. So shouldn't this nullify the request?
Don't the trees grow back after he actually cuts them though?
No.
No, I mean, I'm just asking.
The improvement says the property owner agrees to pay for the purchase and planting.
If so is found that they need to replant trees.
No, the intent when we had that discussion was not necessarily to replant them on the bluff, but to replace the canopy. So on the specific issue at hand, then that the Timberwolf report recommends removal of the trees, I make a motion that we deny the request.
I'll say that.
Murph. Okay, all that.
Have a second by Councilman Turkis. To deny.
What is the motion?
To deny the request.
Speaking. I couldn't hear the motion clearly.
The motion is to deny the request by Scotty Land, so to have the trees trimmed.
Okay, thank you. So, all right.
John Cops,
Yes.
Matt O'Gara,
No.
CC Johnson,
Yes.
Mike Turkis,
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Motion carried to deny the request.
Very good. All right, and I think it's getting late. Maybe we can make an agenda item to relook at the tree policy on city property going forward at another time.
Yes.
So I would just like to clarify then, we have another request that's on, that we're waiting for. So is this acting as another moratorium or are we just?
I would like to put a moratorium on it until we can review this policy and be a little more clear. So I'm not against Scotty.
No, but I think.
Cutting, but there's some verbiage in the policy that we need to be a little more selective on what we're doing.
Right. It needs clarification, Ben needs more information to come back with what does the city want? What does the city need to deal with the overall issue?
Because what I don't want to happen is this next applicant to put them down this process, come back here and the same thing happens again, so.
I think some discussion with the tree board.
Involve the tree board and let's get.
Get it figured out.
Someone want to make a motion to put a moratorium on tree cutting on the bluff? I'll make that motion to put a moratorium on tree cutting until we can.
Can I ask a question really quickly, Jim?
Yeah.
Are you asking for a motion to put a moratorium on all City Bluff properties or just West Bluff?
I would say city bluff property.
That includes parts of East Bluff as well?
Yep.
Okay, it's city property. I'm fine with that.
Yep. Until we can get a little more detail and be selective in what we do instead of clear cutting stuff. Well, some of the massive removal that's happened in the past.
Okay, I've got a motion by Councilman Cup, second by Councilman Turkis, to put a moratorium on all city-owned property cutting of vegetation on the bluff. I'll take a roll call. John Leo,
Yes.
John Cops,
Yes.
Mike Turkis,
Yes.
Matt Magera,
Sure.
yes. CC Johnston.
Yes.
I get you, Mike. Mike,
Twice.
yes.
Yeah.
Motion carried.
And then we're gonna get it on the agenda in the future
Fast.
to relook at some policy. That's true. Coming up with a different policy.
Well, I'll put it on the agenda for the July meeting, and then if the council wants to give it an initial read through, I don't think we'll be able to present anything to you by July, but to give us your comments on what you want to see changed.
And it can go to the tree board.
It can go to tree board, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Quick question, how will the public be notified?
We won't be.
Thank you, that's what I thought.
It'll be in the harbor light or on the website.
But there'll be a clear notice to the public of Harbor Springs.
It'll be on our Facebook page, it'll be on the website. Okay, moving on.
Item-
Stock tree grades.
Oh, trees, okay.
Oh, we cut all those trees, put that one.
So,
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
okay. In March, the council approved spending about $106,000 for the proposed Main Street tree grate project. The motion was there. You see that up on board. So what we got, we put this project out to bid. Margot, DDA Director Margot worked with Benchmark on an RFP, and they worked diligently and quite a bit on this. And they got two bids back, one from Elmer's and one for Harbor Springs Excavating, as you see above there. $248,000 from Elmer's, $263,000 from Harbor Springs Excavating, and that is without the brick pavers. With the brick pavers, they're about $30,000 more expensive. So the lowest bid came in at about $140,000 more than council had anticipated or approved, and about $100,000 more than the DDA had originally asked for at that March 16th council meeting. Margot is here to kind of explain. She attached to this agenda item is a memo from her that she's going to just explain really quickly about what the problem was or why it's so much higher and what we can do going forward.
I'm just going to move a little closer because I know I don't speak that loudly. So after working with Benchmark, I think, and I hopefully you all read the memo. Originally, the bid went out, and we had an original kind of general quote from Cups Masonry, which was about $70,000 for the grates and the concrete work, and then the grates themselves would be around $42,000, and that was where we started. So it was around $110,000. What's happened as the project has grown, more things keep getting added, and the low voltage electricity came in on this bid at about ranging from $42,000 to $46,000. The additional brickwork was another $30,000. Those totaled over $70,000. Another addition was that after discussing with the DDA, the tree board, and Ben Beeling, our arborist, it was recommended, and Benchmark is recommended replacing all of the 38 trees on Main Street. We had originally just highlighted that we were going to be looking at replacing a portion of those that were either damaged or over the size of the grates. And so then doing that, and the cost of that was significantly lower as well, at about what we had estimated after talking to some local nurseries, like removal would have been around $150 per tree, what we ended up getting back was more like $350 per tree, along with then replacing all of the trees, which would total $10,000 in removal and another $20,000 in replacement of the tree. And then the biggest factor that we hadn't taken into account was the traffic control, mobilization and dust control by the contractor. And those costs came in at even on the lowest bidder at $43,000. So Benchmark, Joe O'Neill and I talked quite a bit about rebidding the project. He feels that the costs were significantly higher, trying to bid for a fall project. Obviously, due to COVID-19, many of the contractors were already booked and behind in projects. And so we only got 2 bids. We feel that if we were to come back and possibly bid for the spring of 2021, some of those costs would be, more competitive, maybe get more bids. And also we could look at, are some of these add-ons that where this project has grown, is that the direction that council wants to go? Because without the add-ons, we are around $122,000 plus any mobilization or traffic control costs.
Great.
Questions?
So I think you guys know the issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Margot.
Do we have to make a decision on anything?
Well, I mean, 2 bids came back.
I'll make
2
a
bids.
motion not to accept either bid.
That would be the,
The project needs to be rethought.
Yeah.
We now have accurate bids, more detail, engineering review.
We gotta go back to this.
We gotta go back and revisit it and come back with a
Right,
detailed.
it's not gonna get cheaper next year.
That's true.
Prices aren't gonna go down.
No, prices aren't gonna go down.
So it needs to be redefined.
Yeah, it's turned into
We got an
this is what the
engineering,
federal
well, we got an
government
engineering
does. We
company
don't wanna
involved,
do that.
which jacked the price way up. So,
I guess I'm hearing a couple of different things. One is, do we go back and rebid with some of the suggestions that Margot and the DDA had? Do we completely redefine the project? Do we limit it to just grates, or do we, what is it that we want? I think we need some direction here, because what we don't want to do is put it out to bid again and come back with, $180,000, $190,000, and then the council again say, hey, we can't accept that. And is that, or do we want to reconfirm the amount of $100,000, $106,000 as the limit that you want to spend on the project? I mean,
oh, you mean setting the budget?
well, because we approved the budget of $106,000. If this, do we expect it to come back at that for the project, that for what we want to get?
What we asked, or just a bid over that.
I mean, I guess, plus $10,000, $15,000 minus is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if it comes back at 150, 160, 170, then you have this decision you have to make again.
Right.
So
at this point, I do actually have a motion to deny both bids, and we can edit that motion to include the process going forward.
or they could do a new motion.
Or we can
Or I can withdraw.
withdraw the motion and start with it.
It's more of an off the cuff kind of.
I figured that.
It's feeling spicy. Yeah. Trees are getting past my bedtime. Yeah, I mean, it's just way too much. We allocated 106,000. I think we need to stay closer to that number, especially with. That 106, I mean, was that really thought through? Like, was it realistic, or did we just sort of just come up
The
with
number I gave
Sure.
was realistic. You got benchmark involved. So it brought in all kinds of different stuff. If we'd have just kept it in-house and handled things like we used to do around here with a lot of city projects, we'd save a ton. But when you got Elmer's, and I mean, I didn't even, once benchmark got involved, I got out of it. So they're gonna make things way more difficult than it needs to be. Plus you added, I mean, there's irrigation lines. I mean, a lot of stuff got added. Trees, we weren't replacing most of the trees, those all got added. stuff like that, so. But this isn't gonna get any cheaper, so, at all.
If I may, just briefly, as far as a financial standpoint, we've been talking about this now for quite some time. And I think everybody seems to be, from what I can recall, on board with the fact that something needs to be done with these tree rates. In the past, we have gone down paths with different things where, well, let's do this, and then not do something else and have to turn around and redo it. In my mind, from a budgeting standpoint, I would rather find out between the DDA and city council what it is we want to accomplish, and then make a financial goal. It's been 50 years.
Be realistic goal.
A realistic goal. Do we want to throw $250,000 at this to do it right and be done with it? Then we do that.
How much did it cost to do third? Just that piece?
We didn't do any tree rates on that.
No, I know that.
Just lighting,
Just the lighting.
it was 40 or 50 grand.
So 250,000 doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking about Main Street, doing all the lighting, all the irrigation, all the trees and all the iron.
That does not, this $40,000, I believe, for the electric does not include the lights on the trees. That's just conduit.
No, but a big part of the Third Street
So the
project
grades are
was in fact
60,000.
getting the wire in.
Right.
The lights themselves weren't the major component.
Right.
Based on what we've learned with the bidding process, does it make sense for the DDA, the Downtown Enhancement Committee, to go back and take another look at it? I mean, you've already made some suggestions in your write-up about, well, let's not do the lighting, but let's put in the conduit.
Well, right now, according to these estimates, you got tree rates are 61,000. The paver borders 31,000.
Can I just answer that the tree grate wholesale cost is $42,000? The $60,000 or the $70,000 that was included in the bid includes part of that installation. And I think it kind of is.
Well, it's still,
Right.
you're still paying that. But what I'm
This is what we need to find out though, is installing the grates is just screwing the frame into the concrete, so why does it cost so much? So I think we need to just
Well, it
sharpen
doesn't,
the
because
pencils.
none of
Yeah.
those trees
Or even,
they're
all over the place.
You still gotta, the labor cutting everything out
Right.
Right.
and putting a concrete base back in to accept the grades. So even if you take out redoing all the electric, all the sidewalks and everything else, with these numbers, we're still gonna be at 110 and only get the tree grades. And not get anything else.
Well, was that the original objective, to get the tree rate?
No, originally we were gonna get a lot more.
No, well, so the original from when this started back in the DDA with Rachel Smolinski, when she was, it was all just about the tree bases, just the bases. So,
Grew from that.
and then it grew from that. And not saying that that's wrong, but it was, as Nick was saying, it made sense that, well, if we're gonna want to do this in the future anyway, let's do the electric, let's do this.
Making sense of, do we want to do this in 3 steps and pay more money, or do we want to get it all done in one shot and pay one time and just be done with it? I'm all about getting it all done in one shot. I just think we need to trim the fat. One thing I do agree with John is that I think we can do a lot of this in-house. I think we got the skill level and stuff to do it. I don't think we need to keep hiring all these people to.
I would go back and look at, I guess to try to get the tree grates in, look at just doing the tree grates for now. Save the infrastructure stuff for different times. If you at least get the tree grates situated properly, get your trees in there, we can budget down the road for the sidewalk repair and the infrastructure, because you can go right through the tree grates.
So are
without
you taking down
destroying
certain trees is what you're saying, and replacing certain trees, or replacing them all?
Well, if we can get it within our budget, so you understand what I'm saying? Just looking at doing the trees. Forget about the electric, the water, sidewalks. Just concentrate on the trees. Then I think
So-
this might,
So not take the first flag out, is what you're saying?
correct. All you're gonna do is concentrate on opening up these current trees the way they set.
Do the cuts.
Do the cuts.
Just one thought on that is, the spacing on all of them is different from each other and also from the curb. So I think I don't know if we're gonna end up having to patch,
Well, at this point, it's something you'd have to, I guess, review
right?
in order to try to get something done.
Right.
Because obviously, this package isn't gonna work.
Yeah, go back and rethink it.
But at least if we could do just the tree rates, it would.
Yeah.
It would get us going in the right direction.
So does the council want to consider doing it in-house, or are we still gonna
I think for right now, you've got enough stuff, you may have to,
talk to you?
well, not necessarily me, but I mean,
Yeah,
somebody, okay, whether it's Tommy Huffman or whoever's gonna do the trees, whoever the tree board had picked to do the trees, kind of thing. So get that lined up, get a guy, whether it's me or whoever, what's it gonna take to make these openings work? And then, do you want the brick or don't we want the brick? I would say right now, we leave the brick out, we get the grates in, because down the road, if we're gonna replace the sidewalks and we're gonna clean downtown up, then at that time, the border can be put around there, and that's then it's bread and butter, it's easy to one shot.
Well, given the numbers we're seeing, that's the way to approach it.
I like that.
So just to clarify though, we still need to get bids and quotes because of our bid policy. Anything over $40,000 needs to be put out to bid. So I just got clear what in-house means. I guess to clarify that.
Well, see, we never used to have that, so that's new. But, yeah, I mean, whatever, it's gotta get put out to bid, but I think we should look at that different route, if that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah.
To at least maybe look at trying to get something done this fall.
Public comment?
Public comment? Any public comment? Thanks, Scott.
I wonder if we get more bidders if it's a smaller project. I think that's what Marco was trying to say, with only 2 bidders, it's not gonna be that competitive.
Right. Who, okay. All right.
Be nice to get it done this fall for sure.
Yeah.
I agree.
So how about, I'll make a motion that we rebid the project with just the grates and the cuts, concrete cuts to even it all up. And save the other stuff for another day.
Second that.
Does that include the denial of both current
Yes.
bids?
Yeah.
Yes.
Margaret?
As we're moving forward, to make it clear, so that is not addressing any trees or tree removal, because some of the trees really won't fit within the grate.
Well, but if we're only going to do the tree grates, and some select trees, here we go with trees again, need to come out,
Right.
that should be part of it. But not
I
replacement
think
of
they're all
all the
gonna
trees.
have to be popped out though in order to get the even spacing and the standardization, where they're all equal distance from the curb and equal distance from each other. So originally, we had talked about, some of them just can't be reused because they're damaged or whatever, too big. Some probably could be reused, but is it gonna cost more to, heal them and take care of them, for the period they're at the ground? Joe felt that probably the contractors would give you better prices to put new ones in. I would
I think we should
suggest,
put new ones in.
I think
Then
we
get the
get
fresh
them
start.
spaced right, put new trees in, and just wait on the other stuff.
Then we're back to a redefinition. And I mean, we can use the numbers that we have to estimate what that would look like. And then we can put it out for bid.
Yeah.
All right, so tree grades, concrete cuts, replace the trees. How's
Yes.
that? I'll second.
Okay, now let's
You'll
second
still
that. I
second
still
that?
second that. Let's do that.
All right.
I think it's a good.
And to deny the thunder.
Deny the changes.
I want to get that in there.
We don't play the 260.
All right, John Cupps,
Yes.
CC Johnston,
She fell asleep.
CC,
Did we lose her?
I think we did.
So sorry, I had it on mute, yes.
Thought you fell asleep.
Mike the
No,
Turkis.
not yet.
Matt O'Gara.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yeah.
Motion carried.
Oh, John, don't do that.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Sorry, ladies.
Yeah.
Go get them.
You save some trees.
All right, so we can move on.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Trees in the no, I'm just joking.
Trees in your yard. Behind door number 2.
So this is just simply to schedule, thinking forward, to schedule a special council meeting to review the planning commission recommendations that may or may not come out of this Thursday's hearing. As you recall, we have a hearing on several different topics, potentially temporary changes to our zoning and or city code. So the planning commission is holding a hearing and they're going to make recommendations to the council. Mr. Raymer, Jim, if you're on the phone, I don't know, it may, depending on what the planning commission says, you may need to draft temporary administrative ordinances or not. So I would suggest putting this meeting for next Monday in order to give staff some time to come up with any draft ordinances that might need to be made. But Jim, if you can hear me, I don't know if that's enough time.
I think we can do it, yeah.
Okay. So schedule a special council meeting. My recommendation would be next Monday, June 22nd, I believe, at this same time, 7 p.m.
I'll make a motion to schedule a special meeting, June 22nd, 7 o'clock. Good job.
Second.
You'll lose. 7 o'clock, June 22nd. C.C. Johnston.
Yes.
John Cups.
Yep.
Matt Bagera.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Mike Maternakis.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Excellent.
Before we go to closed session in item F, I think we should move on to the other agenda items and come back to the closed session. That's fine. Manager's report. Really not a whole lot. Beach has opened up. Lifeguards are working 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Executive order number 115 has essentially opened up all businesses in northern Michigan, our region. Charter committee is almost done with its preliminary work here, so we should hopefully in July, at a July meeting, have a update to council on what the charter committee has concluded so far. And the donated mountain ash tree for former police chief Dean Rye is now up front at the police station. You can see it probably from that door, maybe, yeah. And a few, just summary of the boards and commissions meetings. The planning commission met on June 4th and discussed the first part of the master plan. DDA met on June 4th as well, and they talked about several things, but including a new DDA website that should be up and running hopefully within the next month or so, I believe. Yep. And the Harbor Commission convened on June 10th, heard an update from the Ferry Foundation, the elected officers, and they discussed the potential shade sales that the Planning Commission will be hearing on Thursday. So that's all I have from there. So I guess next item is boards and commissions.
Okay. Mr. Cups would like to resign his position on the planning commission due to workload. I would like to nominate Mike Maternakis to take over his spot as council representative. We can vote individually on this.
Is there any other nominations?
There are.
I mean, from the council to be representative? No.
Just the one.
Take a motion.
I'll make a motion that we make Mike Maternakis our council representative on the planning commission.
I'll second that.
Sure.
Thank you, Susie.
Of all people. John Cups.
Yes.
Matt Bagera.
Yes.
Mike Maternakis.
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
And C.C. Johnston.
Yes.
Welcome to the planning commission, Mike.
Thank you.
Now you can move your agenda forward.
Exactly. Thank you, Matt.
All right, and we had Sarah Smith resigned, as we all know. Jeff Ward and Jeannie Benjamin have also left the Planning Commission. George Pete, who's in the audience tonight, has volunteered to be on the Planning Commission. Would be a good choice. Some young blood, new ideas. I've also spoken to Beth Raleigh. She's been a local resident for 40 years, maybe 50 years, long time. She's volunteered to be on the commission, eager to work on a master plan. And then former mayor, Councilman Al Dyka is also interested in serving.
How about Mark Rondell?
How about Mark Rondell? If we have another open position, we might use Mr. Rondell. But right now, I'm bringing these three people to the table.
Okay.
Okay. Discussion or thoughts?
I don't know. I know Al. I don't know the other people. I think Mark, to Suzy's point, I think Mark would make a very good addition to the planning commission. He's very passionate about the master plan and about planning. I think he'd bring an interesting perspective.
Had some different feedback from
I'm sure you
members of the planning commission, people around town on Mr. Rondell.
One man's opinion.
I know, he's been around. Some of his views don't go with I think the vision of what Harbor Springs should be. Or is,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Well, you're the person that does the appointing.
I know, but we all have to vote on it, so we have to have some discussion.
Okay.
Okay?
Make a motion to accept your proposal.
Nick, do we need to all three at once or do it individually?
I think that we can do all three if we specify out motion by to appoint A, B, and C, and then a second, and then a roll call vote.
So you would make that
I'll
motion.
make the motion that we bring George Pete, Al Dyka, and Beth Raleigh onto the planning commission.
I'll second.
Now, in this roll call, since there are multiple pieces, actually thinking if any of the council members chose not one or two or a mixture of those three nominees, they are able to vote no. C.C. Johnston,
Yes.
John Copps.
Yes.
Mike Naterkis,
Yes.
Ben Bugera,
Yes.
John Leo.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay.
I will have our zoning administrator, Jeff Grimm, reach out to the four now applicants to let them know about the planning commission meeting dates, schedules, and bylaws, provide them with all the other good information. So you're welcome.
Okay.
City council, old new business, I guess.
I have one thing under old.
Yeah.
3rd Street painting that we approved a while back, the traffic striping or whatever. I met with Lucas, when was it, last fall, I guess? And I don't know why it's just coming up now, I think because he wants to paint, but we never approved it. Coming up from the movie theater, the church side, actually. When we approved this, things shifted over maybe 5 feet or something like that. And when you go there and actually look at the site, it doesn't make sense to take out, it's gonna cost us some money to take out curbs, put in new curb stops, ADA ramps and everything. Or if we just leave it, the crosswalk where it currently is, but Lucas just carries the painting around like we anticipated. We don't have to get into removing curbs, gutter drain, a tree, and just shifting some things and then having a funny green spot on the other side. It just, common sense and logistics didn't make sense. So my proposal to everybody would be to leave the crosswalk where it is, allow Lucas to paint accordingly. So that the turn radius and everything that we originally approved is still there. It's just a crosswalk will not move 5 or 6 feet to the east. It'll stay straight on going, up the side. It didn't make sense to make a little turn there and I mean, nobody's gonna use it. So that was my recommendation.
When's he gonna paint? When's he gonna paint?
As soon as we approve, I believe. That's how this came up for discussion.
Motion, vote on that?
I mean,
I thought we discussed that when we looked at the area on it, actually. I thought we discussed, like, what you just proposed. I thought.
Yeah, according to Lucas, apparently, it was getting shifted. It didn't make sense to shift it.
yeah, I remember having that discussion as well. There were two, and we decided one didn't make sense, and we were gonna leave it the way it was.
So
that's what I thought. I thought we had that discussion already.
No, I think.
You there, Lucas?
Yeah, I think the motion to, I mean, we don't have a drawing in front of us, but that's what. I
Yeah, I'm
remember
sorry, I was
talking
supposed to
about.
send that out. Sorry about that.
That's fine. As long as you guys are on board with it.
Yeah.
Lucas knows what to do and the chief knows, so.
We talked about it.
Yeah, I don't think any motion is needed. It's just to clarify that that's,
Staff proceed on that.
Yeah.
Just spend it off a motion.
and
Oh, no, that's not.
we'll remind Lucas to get Cece's mirror in there as well.
Exactly. Anything else, John? No, that's it.
Mike? John?
Good.
At the sewer authority meeting the other day, they had signed up for COVID testing of the water or of the sewage.
Yeah.
And the first 3 tests have all come back negative. We're still waiting on our results from Memorial Day weekend. Anyways, it's a tool. I don't know what you do with that. They were looking to see if there was any traction from the communities that use the sewage system to use it as a test, to see if there's COVID in the water.
Urine test,
Sewage system.
basically.
Yeah, basically, waste test. So just bring that up to you guys to think about. We don't have to make a decision now.
I've read about other communities using that, it's kind of an advance, warning, a heads up if things begin to change, you get an advance warning.
Right, and apparently they can, so if they pick it up at the wastewater treatment plant, then they can work back, do check harbors, where harbor stuff comes in, or Bear Creek Township or whatever, and narrow it down. It's fairly expensive.
I was just gonna ask what the cost was.
$1,200 a test, but the price going forward will probably come down. Some new startup company called BioBot. Anyways, think about it. It might be something that's even mandated going forward by the state. It seems to be a pretty viable test. These guys are doing good jobs. Interesting. So that's all I have. I'll let you know the results of the Memorial Day test when we get them back. That'd be interesting to see.
It will.
There are a lot of people up here.
Yep.
I guess that's it. Mr. Rammer, do we have a motion or the wording for a motion to go into closed session?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we would need a councilperson to move to meet in closed session under section 8D of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time an option to purchase that real property is obtained.
I'll make that motion. Second.
I'll second it.
Mike Turgis,
Yes.
John Cups,
Yes.
Cece Johnston,
Yes.
Matt Bogira,
Yes.
and John Leo.
Yes.
Motion carried to go into closed session.
Very good. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Victor, are you gonna call me on, I'm gonna hang up and you're gonna call me back?
Which phone, Cece?
Pardon?
Which phone, which telephone?
Oh, would you just do, 5260970?
Now we all know.
5260970?
CC, I'll be calling you for a beer later.
Cece, was that 5260970?
Right.
5260970.
We'll do a call you in a few minutes.
Hi, Mary Ellen.
Hi, Andy.
Zoom, yes, I'll have you on Zoom.
Okay, thank
Yep, go ahead.
Marilyn. I just wanted to apologize for putting him.
Oh, it's
I
okay.
was having a hard time understanding.
Yeah, he talks in code.
Yeah, that's fast.
We're chalking too, to let you guys know, we can go back to Mr.